Welcome to a very special edition of the BRFCS podcast, one in which our Canadian correspondent Bill Arthur interviews a former player who has an awful lot of Lancashire connections.
I'm at the TSN studios in Toronto today, and I'm here to talk to our special guest, Scottish international Steven Caldwell, who will be familiar to Lancashire football supporters from his time with Burnley and Wigan. After finishing his career with Toronto FC, known as TFC in these parts, he's been working with Canada's leading sports broadcaster TSN as an analyst on all their football programmes, and has just finished his Saturday morning stint analysing today's Premier League games. Welcome to the BRFCS podcast, Stephen, and thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill. I'm really excited to be on. It's a pleasure.
How did the show go this morning?
It went well, actually. We had we had three games actually on our network, but we were focusing on two. Christian was doing Tottenham against Burnley, and there was a late Christian Eriksen goal, and I was doing Huddersfield against Newcastle, and Newcastle won 1-0, Salman Rondon. So, yeah, not the best games today, but we've got a big day tomorrow. We have Liverpool against Manchester United being the second game, the first game being Southampton-Arsenal, so we're very excited about the games ahead tomorrow also.
Yeah, good, a big weekend then. Maybe we could just start, unusually for a Blackburn podcast, let's start talking a little bit about Burnley. I haven't seen the game this morning, but from the sound of it, they were back to their, what should we call it, their awkward best.
Yeah, they were, and we mentioned that when we were watching, Christian and I, my colleague Christian Jack, we commented on it looked like the Burnley of old, because they've not been like that this season. They've conceded a great number of goals. I think there's them and Fulham at the top of the list for the number of goals conceded in the Premier League this year, and it's not what we've expected from Burnley under Sean Dyche. They've been so solid and difficult to beat, and today they went back to a 5 at the back and a 4 in midfield, and just the lone striker up top, and it seemed to really frustrate Tottenham, made it really difficult for them to create opportunities. One of the best sides in the Premier League, and maybe a bit negative, but we have to be realistic. It's the only way a Burnley can go into Wembley Stadium and play Tottenham and come away with any kind of result. So you understand that, but for me, being a lover of the game of football, I'd rather see more expansive football, and in the end Tottenham found a way. And if you love the game, I think you've got to be quite happy when when a team defends. If someone finds an answer, I think it's only fair, and they did.
It seems to happen so often. You get a good defensive away performance, and then you think, are you going to hang on? And then it goes wrong at the last minute. Yeah,
because it's so difficult to concentrate for the whole time, isn't it? That's the challenge of that kind of performance.
Yeah. So, what do you think Burnley's chances of avoiding relegation are?
I think they'll just avoid it, but I mean, they're going to be in a fight. There's no doubt about that. They've came to a point in their Premier League existence, and this latest one where they're getting found out a little bit. They're struggling. I think they need some reinforcements as well, and hopefully they get the chance to do that in the summer, because I'm a wee bit concerned for them. But I do think they'll just be about okay. Cardiff, I still think they'll struggle, and I think Huddersfield. After seeing them today and a number of times this season, although they were excellent last week at the Emirates, they only lost 1-0. I think they'll go down. Then I think it's one of Burnley, Southampton. I'm drawing a blank now, but the 3 or 4 down there. Palace will probably be around a bit. I think West Ham. I think Palace ultimately will have a bit too much. The teams with that quality, or the 1 or 2 players with extreme quality, usually just drag away near the end.
Now, a few weeks ago, I was seeing comments, albeit from a minority of Burnley fans, saying, Dyche has taken as far as he can go.
Wow.
I mean, it seems a bit extreme that after all he's done. I mean, I can't see any reason they should ditch him, can you?
No, I don't think they should ditch him. I like the way they play. I've been very vocal in saying that I think that you have to understand the football club, the area. I'm big on that, the culture of the history of the club, and I think that Sean Dyche is a perfect guy to be manager of Burnley Football Club. I don't think anybody's ever going to come into Burnley and start playing expansive swashbuckling football if they expect that. I just don't think it's realistic. I don't even think the fans want that either.
I think realistically, the bottom half of the Premier League, that's it's been nice to play expansive football, but you have to be realistic as well.
Well, Fulham tried it, Jukanovic tried it, and you look at he was on his way because it wasn't working. They're making too many mistakes, conceding too many goals, and under Ranieri they've been a wee bit more solid. But it's such a difficult thing. We see so much top level football these days that supporters are spoiled. They then want their team to play in that style. it's just unrealistic unless you have the open checkbook and you can get the true quality.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about Burnley in due course, but maybe we could start with where your football career started at Newcastle.
Yeah.
And you joined them at a fairly early age.
I did. I joined when I was 16. I was travelling down there for maybe a year or two before that as I signed forms, but I went there full time when I was 16 and left my family in Scotland and down to the northeast. And
was Gary still with at that time, or did that happen?
Gary
later?
was at school, so he was a Newcastle player, but he was also going to other clubs as well. And the ironic thing is that doing a Blackburn podcast, that I was very close to signing for Blackburn.
Were you?
Yeah, I went there when I was about 13, 14.
Yeah,
and I loved it. There was two main reasons. They were a great club at the time, and they had a fantastic training facility, and they had a manager in Kenny Dalglish, who was my hero, and a youth development boss, Alan Irvin, who I've kept in touch with throughout the years, and they were a huge pull for me, and I was close to signing for for Blackburn, and I always kind of kept going back towards Newcastle and talking with my family, my mum and my dad. The reason that I was going to Blackburn was because of they two guys more than the kind of club. So I decided to go to Newcastle and I signed under Kevin Keegan. But when I got there full time in 1997, Alan and Kenny were there, so it was really ironic.
That's what I was going to say.
I'm glad I never made the decision on people,
Yeah, I realised that when I was looking into the background here that Kenny was there when, or Sir Kenneth, or King Kenny as we used to call him at Blackburn. King Kenny was there. So did you have much involvement with Kenny?
I did. Like I say, through that whole process, I knew him really well. Really well. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but I knew him in personal terms. We had meals together, we spent time together, and it was just a hero of mine, a great man, an even better man in person than what you expect him to be.
So he was your childhood hero?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a bit younger than actually remembering how he kind of played, but he played for Celtic, and that was my team, and of course he was Scotland's greatest ever player, so I knew of him, and I'd seen footage of him, and he was on a pedestal, as he is to most kids in Scotland. And so when I got the chance to meet him, I was overawed, and he became like a friend, a guy that would pick up the phone to me and call me up from time to time. And I just thought that was amazing, and I just loved his personality. He's what you see is what you get with Kenny.
Presumably playing a lot of reserve team football at that time, but he was still involved.
He was very involved with youth set up. He created some good little youth players at Newcastle, and he was very involved in, through the connection with Alan, who was I think Alan was maybe like player development coach then. He was more general coach for everybody at the football club. So he did some first team, and then he kind of transitioned back towards what he was doing at the time, which was more youth development, but very involved and very keen in developing us as players.
Is there any one piece of advice you can think that Kenny gave you that stuck with you throughout your career?
No, I don't think there was any piece of advice. I think there was more the example of who he was, and how he was so true to his upbringing and his childhood as such, his country. He was very patriotic. And he was so down to earth, and that kind of stuck with me, to see a guy with 102 caps and, joint record goal scorer for Scotland and European Cups for Liverpool, and everything that he was just like, this guy was just like normal like everybody else, and he treated everybody on the merits of whether a good person or not. It was didn't care.
I think that's really important. But I seem to recall, when he was at Blackburn, he was signing players. They said one of the things he always looked for was not just the talent of the player, but the personality of the player. Because that was important, that they should gel with the team. And
well, you look at the players that he signed at Blackburn in his title-winning season. You had Colin Hendry, you had Jason Wilcox, you had David Batty, you had Alan Shearer, Tim Sherwood, Chris Sutton, I could go, Tim Flowers, I could go on and on and on, Jeff Kenner.
You'll have me crying in a minute.
Every one of them, though, are outstanding characters. Very good players. Of course, you don't win a title with being amazing players, but it's the character that stands out for me in most of the names, and that's because of Kenny.
So Kenny was moved on, and Sir Bobby Robson. And he was in charge when you first broke into the first team squad, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, what can you say about Bobby?
No, I'm going to say everybody in football says what a great person he was.
Yeah,
you get the impression that what came over on the TV and on the radio was the genuine person. And there were no airs and graces about him.
Yeah, well, it's funny enough. I watched the documentary the other day. The Netflix the documentary is on Netflix now on Bobby, More Than a Manager, and I watched it with my sons. My sons are 10 and 11. I was pretty emotional watching it back because you're right. What you see is what you got with Bobby, and there was no. He was a showman, but he was always a showman. You know, that was just his personality. That was the way that he went about things, and the lessons that I still remember that I learned through Bobby are just incredible. And you know, to watch that back and to hear the stories again, and whether he was at Barcelona or he was in Portugal or he was in Holland or he was with England, it was the same kind of values and culture, and I'm really quite obsessed with that, because I think that at any football club, when I've been successful or when you see success, there's these little characteristics and traits that keep coming out, and Bobby instilled that in us at Newcastle. He instilled it as me as a professional player, and it continues to go through my life, and it made me quite emotional. Did I see eye to eye with him all the time? Absolutely not. You know, there was times I wanted to play more. I was an impetuous young man. I wanted to be in the first team, and it wasn't going to happen, and so you know, it was difficult. We weren't always like best of friends, but there was a respect there, and from him to me, and certainly from me to him. And
if you weren't in the first team, would he take you aside and explain why? Or
yeah, he was he was really very open. His door was always there. You could, go in, and I was in there a lot because I wanted to play more, and I wanted to show him that I was committed to that, and that's my personality. And in the end, it just comes down to preference. And I think Bobby loved me as a guy, thought I was a reliable player, but just didn't see me in the best 11.
I think they had a fairly strong defensive squad at that time.
Well, we had money, didn't we? So we signed Woodgate, who's an awesome player. He was unbelievable, Jonathan Woodgate. And then we had Titus Bramble and Andy O'Brien and myself, and Distan was in the mix. And there was always a 5, 6, 7 million pound player coming in and putting me back the pecking order because I was a young lad. And I tried to break through in that first team, and it just was never really going to happen. And that was, I've not got any, nothing against Bobby because of that, but that was just the way that football was.
Was that why you moved on eventually?
Yeah, it was.
Because of lack of opportunity?
Well, I decided at 23 that I wanted to play every week, 23, 24. Yeah. I'm like, enough's enough. I'd played about 30, 40 games, and I wanted to be a regular. I wanted to be an important player. I probably could have stayed in Newcastle and been a squad player for a number of years, but I wanted to play, and I wanted to be the guy, and then so I found another challenge.
Of course, I think whilst you were there were some ex-Rovers favourites: Shea Given, Kevin Gallagher, Alan Shearer.
Well, yeah, I took 3 great examples of what it takes to be a brilliant professional. Shea was a close friend of mine, closer to me in age than the other 2 guys, of course, and I got on brilliant with Shea, and he was a fantastic goalkeeper. And Alan was iconic captain, a great guy. And
was he as driven in training as he was on the field?
Oh yeah, he was very driven. His attention to detail and the quality that he showed day in day out was remarkable. His finishing drills were just. His consistency to hit the same spot over and over was an unbelievable inspiration. And Kevin Gallagher was a brilliant professional. Kevin and I were pretty close because he was Scottish, and he kind of took me under his wing, and I really appreciated that. And we still sort of keep in touch infrequently. But a great guy, great professional.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of media work now. Yeah, working with the BBC and with BBC Lancashire.
Yeah, he is. A brilliant professional. He was fantastic when he came to Newcastle. He really was. When we needed him, he was just, you knew what you were going to get from Kevin every single game.
Personally, in the Premier League era, because I did see a lot of it, Shearer, I think, is the best striker in that era.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think Shearer's the best striker in Premier League history, and you've got Henry there, and I think Spurs have got a guy in Harry Kane who might just surpass him in goals and in maybe everybody's eyes as the greatest striker, but that remains to be seen. At the moment, it's Alan Shearer for me. His consistency, his quality with Blackburn. That season where Blackburn won the league was just phenomenal. Shea and I actually used to speak about that because Shea was a young lad at Blackburn then watching the games, and he said, the youth team players and the reserve team players would be in the stand. They'd look at each other every week, like, he's done it again. Like, they were in awe of this guy who was their colleague, their teammate, and I was watching from a TV in Scotland, but it was amazing.
I have to say, I'm not a betting man, and the only time I bet is on Shearer scoring a goal.
Yeah, It was like he scored the same goal every week. He got it in his body, he turned and he just whipped it in the top corner. It was like so consistent. And when I was at Newcastle, I got to see why it was that consistent, because he practiced every single day.
Because I think before you broke into the Newcastle first team squad, you were selected for Scotland, weren't you?
Yeah.
You made your Scottish debut.
I did.
That was in strange circumstances, wasn't it?
It was. I was in Poland and I was supposed to play with the 21s, under 21s, with the game the day before. And I got pulled out of the squad because there was a few injuries to the first team under Craig Brown. So I got to go up to the first team hotel and I was excited, and I trained once, I think, with the guys. You know, I'm thinking, okay, it's a great experience. And then I'm on the bench and I'm like, oh, well, this is an even better experience. And Craig gives me a shout maybe around the 50th, 55th minute mark. Come on, you're going on. Couldn't believe it. I went on midfield. Right. I played there, the good player, I can't remember his name, but he was dominating. And Craig's like, go on and get near. Big guy, so he's physical. I think that's why I got the nod. Go on and get near him and stop him playing. I touched the ball 3 times, but I stopped him playing.
That's the main thing. And of course, Gary became a Scottish international as well. Did you play in the same team together?
We did.
That must have been quite the experience.
It was unbelievable. I think we're the first and only brothers in about 65 years. So it was a thing that was coming for quite some time. We played 21s, which was a unique thing. 2 brothers playing 21s, and then we waited and waited. There was one game at Easter Road in the summer against Trinidad and Tobago where Gary came off and I went on, and we were like, oh, we were so close to being there at the same time. And then eventually in Moldova it happened, and it happened a few times, and probably the highlight of my career to play for my country alongside my brother. It was amazing. My brother was an outstanding player for Scotland, and he had some great moments. Maybe me a bit less, but I'm still very proud that we were on the field together.
Do you know all the words to Flower of Scotland?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, you want me to sing it?
No, I think we'll pass on that today, Stephen. In your final season at Newcastle, you went out on loan. You were at Leeds for a little while and made 13 appearances for them. And you scored a goal in one of those appearances. Do you remember that goal?
Yeah, Ewood Park. I remember that goal very well. It was a header.
Okay, well, the BBC reporter that said it was from a corner, and it was a short corner to Kelly, and the Irish defender delivered a deep cross to the far post for a completely unmarked Caldwell to head past Friedel.
Well, that's not what I remember.
But you lost 2-1. I was going to say, you probably remember you escaped your marker.
There was a few guys round about me.
And,
bullet header in the bottom corner.
I was going to say a bullet header, yeah. I don't think that report does it justice.
Yeah, it's funny because Brad Friedel is a guy that I know through broadcasting in North America. Yeah. He worked for Fox for a number of years, and now he's coaching New England Revolution. Yeah. And I scored that goal against Brad, and then I actually scored another one later when Brad was at Aston Villa. And I was playing for Burnley, so he was a guy that I managed to put the ball past, I think, more times than anybody else, so I kind of remind him of that when I see him. 2004 you moved to Sunderland, and as you've just said, you wanted to get more first team time. Was there any reaction between Newcastle and Sunderland, the fans, but moving from between such close rivals? Yeah, it was a difficult ththing to do, but I think that I wanted to move to a big club. Yeah. I knew that I needed to drop down to the Championship to play every week, probably, or that was the opportunity. And the Leeds loan spell came after I'd signed a pre-contract with Sunderland. I tried to go there and we couldn't make it work. So I went to Leeds on loan, which was a great experience and a great club to play for. But I always knew I was going to Sunderland at the end of the season. Right. And Mick McCarthy was a big reason for that. I wanted to be at a club of that size. They showed real interest in me. I didn't need to move house. I was in the area that I loved, and Mick was very persuasive. Yeah. And so I signed for Sunderland, and I knew I was going to get some flack. But I felt confident that the Newcastle fans would understand I needed to play, and the effort that I gave for the club. So Mick McCarthy, a different kind of manager to what you'd been used to? Yes. I think not a lot of difference between Bobby and Mick, but only in terms of generational. Mick's a great man manager as well, and a great guy. And Mick creates squads with accountability and teams that take responsibility and players that are men, really. And that's what I appreciate about Mick. And we were that kind of team. And the thing about Mick is he's very passionate. There's loads of confrontation, but it's forgotten about the next day, and it's dealt with and move on, and we think about the next game, and we keep moving forward. And that was a great lesson. He's tough on centre halves. He's especially tough on young centre halves, which I was at the time. I appreciate that now. At the time, again, we're clashing, we're arguing, but never any grudge there, and complete respect.
Again, he strikes me as from what you see on the TV and hear of him, he strikes me as that kind of manager. Again, what you see is what you get again. There's no airs and graces about him.
And I like that. I like working for guys like that. So I found a guy who was going to teach me how to be a week in, week out professional.
Right.
I'd never really been that, and I was getting on a bit by then. 23, 24, you really should have played more than 40 or 50 games. So he gave me that chance, and I'll forever be grateful.
But that first season at Sunderland turned out pretty well, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Very good team.
94 points, 7 points clear of Wigan. And I've put down a note here, April 23rd, 2005. Do you remember that date?
Yes, I do. I think that was the game we beat Leicester.
Yeah.
Another header.
And you scored,
Another header, yeah.
Another header. Did you score any goals with your feet? Were they all
I did. I scored a couple. Definitely one. I remember one for Newcastle, maybe only one.
So that clinched promotion for you.
Yeah.
How did you celebrate that goal? You didn't slide on your knees, rip your shirt off.
We were in a real fight. We started the season slow. We had put a lot of players together. We had some great experience, Marcus Stewart and Gary Breen, Carl Robinson. Then we had some younger guys like myself. Stephen Elliott came from Man City.
Right.
Then we had Liam Lawrence and Dean Whitehead who came from lower leagues, but quality players that went on to have great careers. So it took us a while to gel, and when we gelled, we started to get it going. And we were in a fight with Ipswich and Wigan and Sunderland up the top. And I think the last 13 games we won 11, lost 1 and drew 1 or something like that.
Right.
We were just on a tear. We went on a run. It was brilliant. And the game you talk about against Leicester, we knew the importance. Ipswich were at Ellen Road. Don't know where Wigan were, but if Ipswich drew or lost and we won, we were promoted. And we played horrible. We were awful. We were lucky. I think Ben Hannock was in goal that day, but our keeper made some great saves, and we hung in the game. And then obviously I got that header to kind of get the victory.
Right.
We scraped out, and I love thinking about that game because it kind of epitomised the way we were our season. We were tough team to beat. We were grinders. We were capable of like rolling the sleeves up and getting mucked in. And like I say, a changing room of leaders and guys who just demanded more, and a lot of aggression, a lot of confrontation.
So you must have learned a lot from that.
So much. Guys like Gary Breen was our captain, but Carl Robinson, Marcus Stewart, the names that I mentioned earlier, just Mick was a big part of that. Ian Evans, his assistant. Just I was like a sponge then. I just wanted to learn and grow as a basically a mid-professional at that point.
Okay, now I hate to bring this up, but let's talk about the following season, because that was quite the contrast for you as you went straight back to the Championship. Is that one of your worst disappointments in football? I
never think back about disappointments, and I'll tell you why, because you learn in any scenario, and you learn probably more in defeat and in disappointment and in adversity. And I learnt so much about me that season, and so much about mistakes that were made and decisions that could have been done better by myself and by everybody else. And so if you have a learning mindset and you keep to that and you try and analyse it, then you take that disappointment in the next step of your career, and you make sure you see the warning signs, you don't let it happen again, or you try and not let it happen again.
So you were able to park it, so to speak, behind you and concentrate on looking forward to the next season?
Well, it was tough, and it's the North East's the best area in the world to play football, in my opinion. But it's also the worst, because when things are going bad, there's nowhere to hide, there's nowhere to go.
But you had phenomenal support still, didn't you?
We still had great support, but we had tough times. We remember a game at Portsmouth, a fan came on the field and he was angry at Kelvin Davies, who had made a few mistakes. A fantastic goalkeeper, had a great career, never worked for him at Sunderland really, And so there was times like that where there'd be 10,000 waiting outside the stadium, and they were very vocal, they're passionate fans. That's why it's a great place to play. So there was tough times, and there was times where it took real strength and basically commitment to getting the ball and to be brave. And I learnt then that's what it really takes. And you can tell people about playing in areas like that and playing for fans like that, but they don't know what it's like till they experience it. And I am very privileged that I experienced that for a club like Sunderland.
But of course, halfway through or partway through that season, Mick got the sack.
Yeah.
and Roy Keane eventually came in.
Yeah, Mick got the sack. Kevin Ball, club legend, took it for a bit. We had some bit of an upturn, but we ultimately couldn't pick up enough points. We were going down pretty early in that season because we were so low in points. And then there was a transition to the ownership where Niall Quinn came in. He took the job for a little bit. He was never wanting to be the coach, but he was looking for somebody to find, and Mick was that guy. Roy was that guy, and Roy came in early in the next season and changed a few things and got some money to spend, and he really created a brilliant little squad.
So again, a new, different type of manager, I imagine? Yeah,
the only real disappointment in my career, something that I'd like to go back to and maybe do things different, or I don't know if that's even possible, but the only disappointment was Roy Keane for me. Roy Keane was a hero of mine. He's an outstanding player, a guy that I loved basically from Forest. Picked him up quite early. I just loved him. I loved when he was at right back, central midfield, back in the day where he was box to box, and then when he became the sitting guy, and just a hero. And I thought he had some great ideas in the game. I just didn't think he was a good man-manager, and he could communicate with people.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the impression you get from outside. Yeah. He never really hit the heights of the manager, and a lot of top ex-players don't hit the heights of the manager. Is it because the players can't come up to the manager's expectations?
It's hard for a guy of his standing to kind of accept that he's dealing with players that have maybe different mentality or different skill set or whatever that is. But when you're a leader of any group, it doesn't matter if it's a football team or if it's a business or whatever it is, it's your job to get the best out of your employees. And I don't think he did that in the early days. I think he found it very frustrating. I think he was still, and I know this from my time retiring, when you retire it takes a long time to transition your brain from thinking like a football player to whatever else you do. Yeah. And I think he was still in the football player mindset and sticking to the things that made him a wonderful captain with that group of players, demanding, and it was a bit too intense. And I think that applied to a few different people. He fell out with almost everybody in some form or another. And
so did you have any real set-tos with him?
I was never particularly. I'd be more scared of guys that you'd be surprised about. Like Chris Hughton would scare me 10 times more than Roy Keane.
Really? Yeah.
Mick is a guy that, is a proper man, So, there's things where the guys get this reputation. I was never scared of Roy Keane. I always thought he started off really analysing the game or whatever, or very tactical. I loved his views in the game, and then his own mindset took him off on a tangent, and then he started to lose his way, and it almost became, I don't know if the word's comical, because nothing's comical when it's football. It's just life and death for us, isn't it? But it became like sort of petty and silly, and so he lost control, and he was learning. He was a young manager, but I just never really seen it. And then eventually Roy and I started to have a dispute about, he felt like I was trying to move away from the club, and I just wanted clarity in where I was. And with Roy there was no second chances, so I went for Mick, who was a guy where there was no grudges held. It was move on, let's do the best for the team. And Roy held grudges every single day with every single person he had an argument with.
So that was, I think you were suffering some injuries that season as well, weren't you? So,
yeah, I picked up a thigh, which was a bad injury.
So again, was that the circumstances, the injury and difficulties, if I can call it that, with Roy, that made you want to move on again?
Well, I didn't really want to move on. I wanted to stay, and I just wanted some clarity in that. And I thought I got it for Roy, because he seemed like he wanted me to be there. And then he changed his mind in a day, and he was like, I want you, you can go and speak to whoever you want.
Right.
And so I only had 6 months to go in the contract, so I, went to speak to a few clubs, one of them being Burnley and Steve Cotterill, and I was a bit, okay, maybe I stay at Sunderland and show Roy what I'm capable of, and fight for my place, because I wasn't keen on leaving a club like Sunderland. I loved it. I loved the area. I loved the club, and he was making it difficult for me. And I think he said a few things I wasn't going to play. So in the end, it was like, okay, it's done. This end of this chapter. Move somewhere else.
That's the end of part 1. Join us now in part 2, where we'll hear more about Steven's career and some more connections with Rovers.